Breaking news are happening now.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Reality Flash. My name is Mike Bloom, and I'm here to bring you the flashiest breaking news in the wide world of reality TV. Today, the 2025 Emmys have finally concluded, and given the fact that I talked about the nominees a couple of months ago, I think it's only right that we finish the job and give you what you need to know about who went home with the big wins from the Emmys and who had their chances of winning the gold snuffed, if you will, out under the lights of the evening's proceedings. But first, as we're talking about accolades, I certainly would always enjoy some from the Reality Flash crowd out there. You have a couple of ways to do so. You can always subscribe to the podcast at therealityflash.com. While you're there, leave a rating, leave a review. So greatly encouraged. We've been doing this, believe it or not, for like 8 or 9 months at this point, but I'm always welcome to any feedback, and especially again, the more people talk about it, much like any of these news pieces that I get into on this podcast, the more it helps other people find it as well. And speaking of those news items, keep sending them my way. I always really enjoy whenever, something happens in the reality TV space and I get an saying, okay, do a reality flash about this. It is greatly appreciated, sincerely, that you were considering this whole operation that I've got going on to give you what you need to know about this type of stuff. So if you want to email directly, you can go to justtips@therealityflash.com from an email. You can also at me as well if you want to let me know about any news that either I should be preparing to talk about or stuff that is just happening that I can give you the skinny on. So all that being said, the Emmys, of course, aired last night, September 14th, on CBS, hosted by Nate Bargatze. Definitely a very surprising filled evening. Many, not to speak from the scripted variety, because that's not really the conceit of this podcast called The Reality Flash, not the scripted Flash, but certainly, as a huge fan of scripted TV, a devotee to television, love to see a lot of the wins that went home. Shout out to Kathleen Lanasa, Noah Wiley, Jeff Hiller. And that sort of maybe counterbalanced the fact that we did not get a huge amount of surprises in the reality categories. We will certainly get into this, but we saw a lot of repeat winners from previous years find themselves much like, 4 or 5-time players on reality shows nowadays, specifically Survivor, popping up on our screens once more. To start things, I'm just going to give you a brief rundown as to what the eventual trophies were won, both last night at the Primetime Emmys, as well as the week before at the Creative Arts Emmys. And then I could do a little bit more dissection, a little bit more analysis for you all. Pretty wild ceremony, by the way. For those who don't know, there was like a whole conceit, and they do this occasionally with like the joke of, oh, we got to make sure that the presenters don't run long, or that the award recipients don't run long, because then it's going to have us, bleeding out of our 3-hour period. And so, they've done it in the past with like Penn and Teller. I think there was something with what's his name, Bob Newhart in a box. I remember when Conan was hosting the Emmys. This year, they really went for the jugular here, where Nate Bargatze said that there was like $100,000 pot that would go to the Boys and Girls Club of America. And basically for every second the award recipient went over their speech, money would get deducted. It's almost like the most dressed up platonic version of Too Hot to Handle you could possibly imagine. I was waiting for Sia to just like storm the stage in the sake of charity and be like, stop it, please, please. But luckily, even though they wound up in the red, there was no blood spilled on that Emmy stage, as between Nate and CBS, $350,000 were ultimately given to the Boys and Girls Club of America. But certainly a polarizing way to conduct a ceremony. But getting into some of these wins, I'm just going to start by reading down the list here. And this is the list presented so handily by the one, the only Andy Denhart over at Reality Blurred. He mixes in a lot of, documentary and nonfiction shows and game shows. I'm going to focus more so specifically on reality TV, both structured and unstructured. If you need a reminder as to what that entails, go back to my Emmy nominees podcast, where I talk about the history as to reality kind of starting off as one big cell before undergoing Emmy mitosis and splitting off into these various categories. But Outstanding casting for a reality program. The winner was Love on the Spectrum. It beat out Amazing Race, Queer Eye, Drag Race, and Survivor. We have outstanding cinematography for a reality program. And the nominees there were also Amazing Race, also Survivor, also Love on the Spectrum, Life Below Zero, which is one in the past, but the winner this year was The Traitors. We have outstanding directing for a reality program. The nominees there were The Amazing Race, Love on the Spectrum, Drag Race, Top Chef, and stop me if you heard this before, this year's winner, The Traitors, for the season 3 premiere. We have outstanding picture editing for a structured reality or competition program. We have The Amazing Race. We have Queer Eye. We have Drag Race. There's The Voice. And the winner, you guessed it, The Traitors US, the season 3 premiere specifically. Outstanding picture editing for an unstructured reality program. Deadliest Catch. We've got Life Below Zero, Love on the Spectrum, Drag Race Untucked, but the winner, common nominee and winner as well. We've got Ryan Reynolds and Rob Mack taking home the win for Welcome to Wrexham. Then we have our big, few at the end here, outstanding structured reality program. The winner of that was Queer Eye. I believe that's the 7th win that Queer Eye has done in the past 9 seasons they did of the reboot. So yeah, suffice it to say, when it's doing its 10th and final season coming up, it's got a lot of Emmys to lap up in the process. It was up against Antiques Roadshow, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. Apparently, the award was not donkey sauce for Guy Fieri and Company. Love is Blind, both seasons that aired last year, as well as Shark Tank. Outstanding unstructured reality program. The winner was a perennial favorite at the Emmys, including this year, Love on the Spectrum, up against another Netflix series, America's Sweethearts, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, Drag Race Untucked. I would say one of the newer hot kids in the reality TV club. We've got Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which, as we've talked about on this very podcast, has slowly kind of bled out into other ABC reality TV, and the aforementioned Welcome to Wrexham. And then we've got a couple of big categories to finish things off, especially for, I'd say, the bread and butter of this particular network, which is specifically reality competition programs. So let's start with outstanding host for a reality or competition program. And there's been a good amount of people who have won this in the past. I would say, a couple of nominees that unfortunately continue to remain winless. Kristen Kish from Top Chef, who once again got nominated for her work there. And then the entire panel for Shark Tank. Mark Cuban had his last chance at that Emmy, was not able to close that deal. And so it came down to 3 common favorites in this category and previous winners in this category. We have Jeff Probst from Survivor. We have RuPaul from RuPaul's Drag Race. And we have Alan Cumming from The Traitors. And for the 2nd year in a row, the dressing up was so nice, he won it twice. Alan Cumming took home the award once again for outstanding host for a reality or competition series. And speaking of competition program, that led us to the last award, the only award that was actually announced last night on the Primetime Emmy Awards proper, complete with a very interesting speech from Leanne Morgan, where she was trying to relate her life to each of the nominees. Again, your mileage may vary when it comes to award show banter, but outstanding competition program came down to The Amazing Race, RuPaul's Drag Race, Survivor, Top Chef, and The Traitors. And the winner was The Traitors. So, the big headline, far and away, from the 2025 Emmys are that The Traitors not only won big, they won everything. The Traitors was nominated for 5 Emmys. It won 5 Emmys, a 100% success rate for The Traitors. Unlike maybe the Traitors themselves on the show, the actual program, incredibly successful when it comes to securing the bag. And I will admit, maybe I didn't expect them to go fully 5 for 5 because, again, some of these more technical elements, as much as I absolutely love the show, am I going to look at like the cinematography of the season premiere and put it up against some of these other shows? No, not necessarily. But I think it really speaks to the fact that when it comes to this Emmy voting, in particular with reality shows, and not to say that this is like to bemoan the traitors whatsoever, I thought it was an incredibly strong season this year. And I would even say with a show like Survivor, this is not to completely say that they put forward maybe their best efforts. I think a lot of people with season 48 in particular felt that this was not Survivor's strongest. But looking at how much Traitors clean swept every single category it was nominated for, I think speaks less to the show itself and more about kind of what the show represents. This is something that gets talked about a lot when it comes to award show discourse, particularly around television, because movies come around once a year, obviously. TV shows, because they hopefully come back on a seasonal basis, they get continually brought up in the conversation time and time again. The fact of the matter is, we are in a veritable glut of TV right now, and nobody, not even Academy voters whose job it is to watch all the TV, can watch all of the TV. And usually, despite the fact that I think unscripted reality TV has really had a huge resurgence in terms of returning to the public eye in such a fantastic fashion, and Traitors is a big part of that. I don't know how many Academy members actually watch reality TV, let alone all of these reality shows that are nominated for awards. And so I think you find with smaller awards like this, or even some of the other, categories of Emmys as well, they're not particularly shown on the broadcast. When you're filling out a ballot, I would imagine, and again, maybe I'm putting words in some people's mouths, but I imagine it kind of feels like sometimes if you haven't watched all of these shows to genuinely glean your own sort of tastes based on what is in front of you, you then sometimes sort of base it on either A, what has won in the past, because chances are it has maintained, if not the same sense of quality, increased said quality, or B, you look at, okay, what are people talking about? If enough people are saying X is good, chances are X is good. Now, granted, again, in some of these bigger categories, you do get surprises. Jeff Heller being a great example of like, hey, nobody was really talking about this outside of a niche few. And so the underdogs in true reality TV fashion come through and take home the win. That does not often happen in outstanding reality competition program. I mean, really looking through since this entire award, I should say, was created. You look at The Amazing Race winning year after year after year, basically, except for one combo breaker year of Top Chef from 2001 all the way to 2012. Then you have The Voice starts taking over. Then The Voice starts going for a while until Drag Race takes over in 2018. And then Drag Race was running up until pretty much 2024 when the Traitors took over. And considering the fact that it doesn't seem like the Traitors US specifically is stopping anytime soon. In fact, we did a previous reality flash where, if anything, they are adding onto the Traitors by doing this new civilian season coming to NBC. I would stand to bet there's a fair chance that the Traitors will be this sort of rolling stone, much like the busts of those season 3 contestants that were rolling down the hill in the moors of Scotland, that either it continues to gain acclaim and more people watch it and vote for it, or it becomes a matter of, oh, yeah, that won last year and people really love the Traitors, so let's keep voting for it. And so, when I got the chance to talk with Jeff Probst before season 49, a few weeks ago, I got to ask him about his reaction to these Emmy nominations. And I talked about this during, my nomination podcast. It's a big deal for Survivor to kind of surge back into this category. It hadn't been nominated for Outstanding Competition Program until a couple of years ago. Jeff got nominated as host for the first time last year since he had that like 4 or 5-peat back when the award was first created. And so I really do feel like the show is kind of back in the zeitgeist, and it being sort of re-acknowledged by its peers, as Jeff talked about with me. is a big honor. And I do think he is sincere when he says it's just an honor to be nominated. And the fact of the matter is, as well, Survivor has been doing their thing for umpteenth amount of years without really getting a huge amount of Emmy love. I don't think this loss is really going to impact the way they do things. What could be interesting is that maybe Survivor's biggest challenge in particular to the Traitors seemingly rise to dominance in this category might come next year when season 50 will be eligible. If that is a monster of a season combined with, I think, a lot of the attention behind it, that could maybe nudge it above Traitors. Drag Race, I think, as well, could have a really strong season. I think, again, this type of award in particular just kind of comes and goes in waves. So right now, the tide is in the Traitors. We'll see when that tide turns. I don't really see it happening in the far-flung future. But yeah, all that is to say, for that reason, I'm not incredibly surprised by the results of the Emmys. I am happy that Love on the Spectrum specifically gets some love here. And again, not to say that Traitors is not deserving of its accolades whatsoever, considering that, as I talked about before, how much it really made reality TV kind of like a water cooler conversation for the first time in a long time, bringing all these respective fandoms together. What I would say is that there might be an increasing amount of awards to line that turret for years and years to come, just given the momentum of the Emmys typically. I'm going to be back in a flash to bring you some more standout moments that happened from this year's Emmy Awards in the reality TV space. I'll be back right after this. Okay, so I hit through the major things you need to know about the Emmys in terms of winners. Now is the potpourri side of the podcast, where I get into a couple of, I would say, more talked about moments around these reality shows over the course of that evening. Now, of course, if you watch social media over the course of the telecast, you would know that all these reality alum that have been on the Traitors poured in all their love and congratulations for Traitors for winning the Emmy, specifically for Outstanding Reality Competition Program. What I do find interesting is that, Jeff Probst, of course, in attendance at the ceremony, we'll talk about his involvement in multiple ways. He does technically lose out to Julie Berry, who is a producer on The Traitors. So even 20 years later, they keep finding each other in each other's lives, in a manner of speaking. Talk about a quantum entanglement. But let's talk about Jeff himself, because I think, at least partially given the fact that this was on CBS, he did play a fairly, prominent role in this evening's proceedings. First off, what I will say is that Jeff's seating in the auditorium for the Emmys was very fun. There was a little bit of a tease, I think, on social media as to where he was going to be. But we actually got a big glimpse of Jeff before his big moment at the Emmys, which I'll get into because I posted this on social media. Jeff was sitting right behind none other than Tramel Tillman from Severance. And so when Mr. Milkshake ended up winning his very well-deserved Emmy for his work on Severance, Mr. $900 Milkshake in the form of Jeff Probst, as you can see right here, gleeful as all get out. I think he's also seated next to the guy that plays Angel Batista on Dexter. I can only imagine what the conversation between these two are like. The way that was interesting is that Adam Scott is a noted Survivor fan. I'm kind of surprised they did not put Jeff next to Adam so they could shoot the shit. Maybe Jeff was trying to get Tramel in on it. Maybe Tramel was trying to teach Jeff some dance moves for the next time they do a fried chicken and waffle song on Survivor. But despite the fact that, he would end up losing for Outstanding Reality Competition Program, Jeff did have some time to shine in the spotlight, or the torchlight, as it were. As for the award for, I think it was Outstanding Scripted Variety Program, there were only 2 nominees this year. This occasionally happens with the Emmys. It was Last Week Tonight, and it was Saturday Night Live. And so they brought out Jeff, and they really like decorated this set out to the nines. They covered it in full Survivor iconography. You can see the Izadega garlic bulbs for what they used on season 48 in the back. Jeff sort of walks by, I think it's maybe the Kagayan immunity idol on a podium, but he ultimately gets to the tribal council bench where a la Andrew Lloyd Webber's cameo in Sunset Boulevard. Comment if you got that reference. Jeff is standing next to cardboard cutouts of John Oliver and Lorne Michaels. I cannot believe Jeff Probst would be caught dead with a final two, but the Emmys forced his hand. And you could tell that, like, somebody wrote this speech for Jeff, and I don't exactly know if they were a Survivor fan, because they are things that Jeff says just slightly off. It's like if you took a bunch of his catchphrases and used Google Translate to translate them into like Finnish, and then you translated that into like Cambodian, and then you translated it back into English, where it comes out a bit more of a jumbled mess. Like, he talks up how both shows dug deep, when again, we're used to him saying dig deep, maybe in the more present tense when it comes to the challenge. He addresses these two cutouts like he's Clint Eastwood, and he says, "Do you both know the prize you are playing for?" Which is, again, kind of hits the brain oddly, right? As devoted Survivor fan, we want to know what you're playing for, in which case he'll then lasciviously go over the details of even the most mundane things. I don't know if they had the time for him to do that as he describes the Emmy trophy. So again, they framed it to, do you both know the prize you are playing for? I want Jeff to kind of try that out. After 50, hopefully he tries a bunch of new things in terms of Survivor production, maybe change up the phraseology a bit. It happened with 41. And it turned out that the winner was Last Week Tonight. I did like the effect where Jeff actually, usually when these presenters open up the envelopes, unless you are conducting some sort of grave mistake, like the Moonlight La La Land controversy, usually it's sort of like keep the envelope to yourself. But Jeff, true to his job, like a ballot, turned it around to show that the winner was Last Week Tonight. I suppose if I'm trying to draw the analogy here, either the Academy was Laurel in that it was the only vote that mattered, or was the Academy like the entire jury? In which case, I would say that given some SNL discourse over the past couple weeks, Lorne might have lost to a bitter jury. That is for sure. And I think what was also really fun was that when they end up taking the stage, John Oliver and company, I should say, they attempt to have Jeff playfully snuff the torch of Lorne Michaels, which, again, just take this image and it probably feels so cathartic to the hybrid Survivor SNL fans out there, both of you. But what's very fun is that I only captured this in an image, but when he tries to like pull the snuffer back up, the flame is clearly still lit. I don't know if it was rigged up to just stay lit in case it blew out or anything, but shades of Lil in Survivor Pearl Islands that Jeff tried to snuff out the torch, but the gods of Hollywood just wouldn't have it that way. Is that a sign to come that Lorne is not giving up anytime soon? We shall see. But Jeff wasn't going to stop there in terms of providing content. So there's a clip that's been going around a bit last night. Jeff on the red carpet for the Emmys got an interview with Entertainment Tonight. And so Entertainment Tonight brought up this idea that has been bandied about for the past little while. Look, we are a little less or a little more, depending on how you found out about this information, a week removed from the absolute abject devastation that was losing Rachel Riley on Big Brother 27 in just an absolutely cacophonous, nonsensical series of decisions on really all parts, in front of and behind the camera, to eliminate her in this big surprise twist where she's taken out in an elimination via competition rather than an eviction vote. And due to the understandable groundswell of support around her, there was a lot of talk about nobody has ever done the CBS Big Three before, the trifecta of Survivor, Big Brother, The Amazing Race. People have gotten close, but no one has secured that CBS EGOT, in a manner of speaking. And people have been putting forward the petitioning to want to put Rachel on there. I know that she has expressed wanting to do it in the past. And so the fires have been relit, much like Lord Michael's torch, in a manner of speaking. So Jeff was asked about this as to whether they would want Rachel Riley to be able to bring in some floaters from the sea in water challenges on Survivor. And Jeff replied by saying, well, first, she's got to apply. I mean, come on. She's got to want it bad enough to send in a little 2-minute video and say, here's why I should be on. As he says, there are no secret passageways to getting on Survivor. Now, I would venture to say that there might have been in the past. And much like, recapturing an old fortress, those secret passageways were closed off in the new era. I definitely think that Jeff's mentality does carry over to modern casting. You look at celebrities who have been cast in the new era. Someone like Nate Moore, Marvel producer, had to apply. John freaking Lovett had to apply to be on the show. I do think that we are past the days of just reaching out to celebrities and being like, hey, do you want to be on this? Or even like, when you bring in like a Hayden Moss or a Beast Mode Cowboy, where it's like, hey, you were on this show. Do you want to try Survivor? Even when they do that, they still put forward a mandatory audition process where you have to put a video in, even if there's expressed interest beforehand, and you have to undergo a process and everything like that. What I find incredibly humorous is that if Rachel really wanted to do this and she had to send in a 2-minute video, there's a very easy solution. Could she not just go onto YouTube, onto TikTok, find one of these many compilation videos that fans made for her in the wake of her disastrous elimination from Big Brother, and just submit that? Is that not a key example of like, my resume speaks for itself? Look what I can do on these other shows. This is what I can do on Survivor. I don't know if we need to be as formal, Jeff. I mean, listen, this is a show about people's everyday wardrobe being in their dirty underwear. The formal aspect of this show has kind of gone out the window. So I understand what he's talking about. And a Rachel Riley Survivor audition video would be absolute gold. But I mean, for what it's worth, he seems to entertain the notion. He ends the conversation by saying, I think she's got a shot. And so we shall see what Rachel's mentality is like. I don't know if Jeff knows that Rachel also works in reality TV casting, which might be something that precludes her from being cast. It seems like it didn't really hurt anything with Big Brother, but Big Brother, obviously a different beast. Obviously, Rachel has a deeper connection with that supersedes her time in casting. But I don't know, planted a seed of hope for us reality TV fans out there that are certainly not done seeing the Red Queen on our screens anytime soon. But I'm intrigued to hear from you all. What are your thoughts about this year's Emmy Awards? Do you agree with me that the traitors will continue to reign supreme in the near future? Do you want to see Rachel on Survivor? How do you think she'll do on Survivor is probably the better question. Would it be a deep run? Would it be an early flame out? Will there be another set of bullshit twists? Because here's the thing, as incredibly egregious as the hamster wheel of death was, I don't want Rachel Riley to go on a journey and lose her vote to a roll of the dice. That's all I am going to say. But let me know your thoughts. Are there any other people you want to see finish off the Triple Crown of CBS reality? Of course, you can always respond here in the comments on YouTube, or again, you can respond in the comments and the ratings and reviews, or on social media. And once again, if you have any tips that you want to send me, no spam, no solicitations, just tips at therealityflash.com. That's going to do it for today's edition of The Reality Flash. Thank you all so much for listening. That'll be just a nice solo breakdown of everything that happened on the Emmys, both on and off stage. Let me know if you want me to do more of these, more recaps of big events around the world of reality TV. Always excited to hear from you all out there. I'll be back in your eyes and ears soon with more reality TV news as it breaks. Until next time, everybody, you've just been flashed.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.